Hey everybody, welcome to today's stream, Get Naked Monday, where we metaphorically get naked and talk about things going on in our own lives and how we're handling them. Today, I wanted to talk about dealing with rejection. This video is not going to be about how to deal with rejection because it's something that I'm presently working through, and I just want to use this space to just kind of talk about it with Tim. You guys can come in and join and talk about it with us as we're live, and so with that said, let's just jump right in. I say that often. Let's jump right into that. Well, welcome back to Thought Raid, a show where we take on thoughts and find better ways of thinking about them. I'm Brandon. With me today is Tim. I'm about ready to hit the wrong key because we haven't done this in quite a while. And today is Get Naked Monday, where we metaphorically get naked and talk about things going on in our own lives and how we're handling them. And again, this is a day where I'm just going to be talking about something that I'm working through. And I don't have an apple of wisdom in this. This is the whole purpose of Get Naked Monday, is for me to just kind of share with you guys how human I am, and how I am humanly processing my human emotions, because I know at some point, if we get to a place where we have a lot of people following us, it could be really easy for us to look like perfect individuals, and I'm not about that life. I'm not perfect. I am figuring things out. And this is my area, this is safe space for not just me, but for any of you guys who join us who want to talk about what you're going through, to also have a space to talk about it, so long as you're okay with talking about it publicly, because this is obviously live streamed. But that said, rejection. Oh my gosh. This has been... Honestly, Tim, I kind of feel like 2022 has been the year of deconstruction and reconstruction for me, of like a lot of things that I was used to having in my life, a lot of experiences just all of a sudden halting entirely, being destroyed, and then wrecking me, and then trying to like rebuild from that. Like, I'm talking early on, the very beginning of this year, changes started to hit the place that I worked. And they're still in the process, in the flux of changing. There's just stuff going on in the community that I'm a part of besides this one. Stuff happening that hit me like immediately thereafter that. And then not only that, but the amount of energy that I've had to deal with all of this has been lower, because, here I am trying to continue to do what we've been doing with Thought Raid, but also make sure that I have plenty of energy saved for New Balance, but also make sure that I have plenty of energy saved for my close friends, but also have energy saved for the many weddings that seem to be in a short consecutive time space. And then, after all that's been done, try to have space for friends outside of my close friends, so that people know that I still exist and I'm still interested in them. And it's just been crazy. And this year, especially, it seems like a lot of long-standing friendships and relationships have just crumbled around me. Some of them out of my control, some of them possibly within my control, and that's like the hardest part. But I've had to make some stands, and I've had to also recognize that I've grown in some ways that are not sustainable for the previous, hey there, Deathbane, for the previous relationships that I have maintained. And it's been hard because I have been dealing with rejection from as small as, I can't be around you like I used to, but we're still friends, to I hate you and I want you to die and you are the scum of the earth. And we've had that has been the spread of types of rejections and I'm not joking. They've been as bad as that. Stuff that would make the average person or at least me, I don't know, but I feel like the average person uncomfortable and kind of feeling a little bit unsafe, to say the least. And that's a lot, Tim. Like, I don't feel like I was made for this, Tim. There was no preparation for this, it feels like, walking into 2022. And here I am, and I feel like an absolute broken man all over again, fresh for Thought Raid. And you've been through part of that with me.
I feel like this year, more than any other year, you and I have been at each other's throats. Just in ways where it's like, my goodness, this person annoys the crap out of me, or this little tick about them. Like we've been arguing about stupid things this year so far, and we've been doing what we've been doing for a couple of years now. And it's like, I don't know, it's just so interesting to see the things that'll press our buttons. But it's got a root in something else, talking about rejection, just seeing you walk through rejection and how you respond to it. And I don't necessarily know if it's rejection that you're feeling on your side, but you rejecting other people, so to speak, not just saying, I reject you, but drawing boundaries. Like, what do you think the relationship is between boundaries and rejection? Because I think that's something that needs to be said too.
Like, so this is like a question of like, what in my head is the difference between having boundaries and being rejected by people?
Okay, so you were talking about the other community earlier, and it's like you've been rejected by them, yeah, but they've also felt rejected by you because
Right.
of a certain boundary that you put up. And it's like, rejection hurts regardless because it's two things separating.
Right.
But I don't know. I think, at least for me, when I felt rejected in the past, I always think about it from the perspective of like, how do I feel about being rejected by the other person? I rarely think about it from the perspective of, oh, this person must be feeling hurt because I've rejected them in some way.
I mean, like, I'm not exactly sure how to answer the question other than to just kind of answer it with what I was expecting and what I wasn't expecting, I guess. That's one way that I know to answer that. Like, when it came to setting the boundary that I did, I was expecting, people to be hurt by that, because the boundary is something that I wish that I could have really set a long time ago so that it didn't come as a surprise. It wasn't something that just hit people out of left field. But I didn't really have the foresight to know that that was something that I needed to do before it got to where we got. And so I know people got hurt, and I know that people felt rejected by me, and that's valid. And I'm glad that you bring that up again, because I know I played a role in other people feeling rejected. And so I expect boundaries to hurt. I expected, saying this boundary was definitely going to hurt other people and be a shock and surprise. What I wasn't prepared for was the sheer amount of hatred that came with that, as well as seemingly the unwillingness to work through that moment of them feeling rejected. Like, there was a little bit of that in the very beginning, but it
Yeah.
seemed like as time passed, there was less and less of a willingness to talk through these sort of things. And that's what hurts more. Not the all the stuff that panned out from the decision that I made. Like, I was expecting that to hurt. I was prepared for that. I knew it was going to suck. And I knew it was important to be done. But I was not prepared for the lack of grace. Because, so for instance, okay, when you and I, Tim, have a problem, you and I work through that. We talk about it, and you say, this is how it made me feel, this is what I meant to say, whatever. And then we're good. We work through it, or we're better. Maybe the situation can immediately be resolved or whatever, but we work through it, and we're closer for it. In the situation that I've recently experienced, I got some of that, and I also got some of it from the least people I would expect least to get it from. But then I greatly didn't get it from a lot of people people whom some of which I have spent more time with than I have even with you. And so when that happened, it was just like, what? Like how? And what was difficult too was that I don't necessarily have the time to pursue every individual person involved in the situation. And so it's like, if any one of them were to engage me, I would happily engage, work through things until at least the friendship can be maintained. Maybe not obviously having the position restored, but the friendship absolutely would have been worth it for me to continue to work through. I just don't feel
Well,
like that chance was given.
talking about all these friendships that you had through that other community, you made the comment to me that you've been with these people for a long time.
Hmm.
And I think about the relationships that I've had in the past where it's just been a relationship based on time, not necessarily quality. And I'm not saying your relationships with them were not quality, but as far as how deep you dug, I think it's kind of interesting how when you put up a boundary, some people rejected you along with that boundary, and that really hurt.
Yeah.
But then there were, as you said, there were some people that would actually step towards you to say, "Hey, let's clarify this. Can we talk?" And that was surprising. And like you and I had an altercation the other day. We were recording something, and I was miffed at you, or I was miffed at something. I don't know what it was. I
No.
don't remember.
So it wasn't it wasn't a recording. We were both playing Minecraft.
No,
Um,
we were recording here at my house, and I just didn't want to talk about something. I was
Oh, that. Oh, okay.
aggravated.
Yes, yeah. I don't remember the things you were specifically miffed at, but yes, and me like trying to get things exactly right was just like icing on the cake for you.
Yeah, and I was like, man, I just want to get through this because I got something to do soon. Like I was on a schedule, and I was upset, and I didn't want to talk about it because I just wanted to progress and get things done. And you were
Hmm.
like, well, no, and I was like, Brandon, dude, can we just please? And I completely threw out your plea for reconciliation because I was in time constraints. But then we figured it out after the fact, and I don't know. I think that's really interesting because I've had a lot of people that would just reject me along with different circumstances as though I was that circumstance. But then you have other people where you give it enough time and given space, it's like they've built trust with me where I saw that they would come back to me, or trust that I would come back to them.
Hmm.
And I think the way that certain things were navigated in those other relationships, how there was a boundary put in place, and there was some rejection on either side, whichever side you want to take or observe. There was rejection there, and then somebody was like, "Okay, well, I'm not going to pursue this." It's quite telling how they viewed your relationship with them, or how you viewed your relationship, well, how they reviewed, basically how you both viewed your relationships. Like there were certain ones that you went after, like with Axeman. Like you were a lot more intentional with him because there was a lot more quality there, and he spent time talking with you. And then there were other people that just wrote you off completely. You
Right.
know, it's like, does tenure really quantify quality?
Yeah.
I, I don't know. I think there's a correlation there somewhere.
Yeah. It is interesting that like as you're mentioning that like not all relationships, like some of them are just time based, but they don't have any quality built into them. There's a longevity, but there wasn't any sort of like if the friendship were to be a garden, the garden had sat there for a long time, but no seeds were sown and no watering was done. And so it was more so just like a box of weeds than it was, something of fruits and vegetables or whatever. So timing, one thing I've had to see and learn and experience was that timing doesn't necessarily is not an indicator of the quality of a friendship. Um, but it still is something that I've pondered over and thought about and everything because some of the people caught up in this decision that I've made were upset and hurt that I did not trust them the way that they thought I should trust them after the time frame had passed that they had been a part of the community. And at first, that was something that was a little bit like, huh? because I like I mentioned previously about the whole paradigm of the garden. The garden existed. Here's a representation of our friendship, but there was no seeds planted and there was no water poured on it. So I got it on, when it was, heading outward, but when it was coming inward, I began to reflect on that some more. Like there was some friendships seemingly where the time was spent and I did plant seeds and I did water them, and there was, mutual communication, mutual sharing of like, here's what's going on in my life, here's what's going on in my life. We had all the signs that would represent a close friendship, and even that went up into flames. And it's just like, what? And so like, in that case, the 10-year would be surprising for me because it was like there was some other factors besides just time, but the results still ended up about the same. And that's what perhaps was hurt the most in this, time of rejection is the people whom, I did invest a lot of time in, but then the grace was not there. And honestly and truly, Tim, I have not handled every one of those situations well, and I recognize that. But I also have lived around long enough and have experienced healthy relationships long enough to know that, like, between you and I, or Eric and I, or Dan, like all these close friendships that I have, you guys, if something happens, you do not let the grievance sit there for too long without eventually coming and talking to me. You may not do it the same day or the same moment, but I can be at peace knowing that at some point you're going to bring it up and we're going to work it through, and either I'll have some changing to do, or you, or neither, or whatever. But it happens. And the fact that I haven't received that from a lot of the people in the community is just shocking to me and hard. And there was that one moment when we were on the Minecraft server where I was just not okay. And I was just like,
oh, you bit my head off.
I bit your. I know. I'm so sorry. Still,
I was just sitting here. I was thinking, man, I've had a stressful 2 weeks. I'm gonna just sit here and build some stuff. And Brandon jumps on. And he's like, Tim, let me tell you how much I hate you.
I don't hate you at all. But I was not okay in that moment, and I was just like, what was the point of the whole 9 years that I invested into this community? Did I make a difference? Did I change anyone's lives? And the answer obviously is yes, but in that moment it's just like did it it felt like a lot of people received from me and then just turned around and trampled me like pearls before swine. It felt like in that moment of just like,
well, I think the breakdown there, Brandon, is that you had different expectations of the relationship than they did, because it's like you led that community to it, well, in most degrees and different facets. And I think you and I talked about friendship and versus tenure and quality and stuff recently. And it's like you had an expectation of, oh yeah, we're actually friends. And you qualified that based on how our friendship is and how your friendship is with Dan and all, Eric and all the other people that you know in real life. And when these people didn't rise to the occasion in the same way that your healthier relationships have, and by healthier, I mean just more intentional, focused on going deep relationships, that's where the rejection came into play. It's like, wow, I thought these relationships equaled these relationships. And when they don't, it's like, wow, I guess my expectations were just out of whack. Would you agree to that?
I mean, there was definitely a difference of expectations, yes. I don't know to what degree they're out of whack. I think one of the biggest ones that I'm looking at and assessing that we have talked about in other thought raids was, can someone who you're mentoring become lateral with you? Because in some cases, yes, like there was a time where, and I think you've mentioned this, there was a time where I mentored you in the things of Christ, at the very least, and we were not lateral in the beginning, but then you came and you rose and were lateral. And so, like, from my experience, that's one example. And so I kind of like, and I've always done this, and I don't think I'm necessarily going to change, but my expectations or standards of what I'm looking for, criteria may change. But there was some other people in the community that I also thought had, risen to that space and have not. And like I've had to go through some grieving with a couple of the community members of like recognizing that I wanted them to be here, thought they were here, but then when all this happened, found out that they still have a lot of immaturity that they're working through, and just lack of perspective and stuff. And I don't know how much of that is my own perspective on the matter and how much of it is reality, but it definitely, there was some decisions that I've known this was a good decision, this was a right decision, that the people have yet to, like, they're not quite entirely sure of. Um,
Mhm.
and that's been really hard. That's also, in addition to feeling rejected, I've also been feeling grief of wanting things to be something that they're not. So that, yes, expectational issues that were awry that have come out of this, that I really don't know if it had ever been able to be seen if it wasn't for what's happened to happen.
Yeah, Brandon, I remember when you and I first met, there was a relationship that I had, and I was trying to navigate expectations with that. And there was a lot of hurt that came from it. Like, I had expectations that were here going this direction. The other person had expectations going in this direction. And it's like I felt like I was doing all the right things. Now, I didn't do things perfectly, and I did do some things to damage that relationship in my own way. But it was hurtful because I did feel rejected when they didn't go the same direction as me. But I also felt hurt that not only was there rejection, but there was grief because it's like I wanted that to happen.
Yeah.
I saw what it could be. Um, and when that split, it was like, man, did I actually get rejected, or was it just reconciliation of we're not going the same direction? And is that what really hurt? Because I think I don't know. I don't really know if you can feel rejection and grief about that at the same time, maybe. Um, because it wasn't you that was getting rejected. I really don't think. I think it was just the boundary where they were like, okay, this is where I end. This I don't want to go. I don't want to pay the price of admission to go beyond this boundary.
Which, sure, like, and I could agree that they were more so rejecting the boundary than they were rejecting me until we got to that place where it was just like the friendships that I thought I had were also breaking down at the same time. Like, it was one thing when everything started to fall out, and I started to, lose people in the places that they were. And then it was a completely other thing when I began to try to reach out and talk about it and work through some things to try to maintain the friendship, and then that wasn't being received. That's where that began to really affect me in terms of really feeling rejected, because it's like, if for me, if there was a situation that, again, there was a problem that I had with a decision that someone made, I would go out and work my way through that situation with them, trying to understand their perspective. And then if there came to a place where I truly couldn't accept the boundary, I would still try to maintain friendships in that process best I can. Unless of course the boundary was so terribly bad that it was just like, this is unsafe for me to accept, not just, the boundary that they set, but also by proxy friendship with them. And maybe that's what it is for them. Maybe that's the situation where they feel unsafe around me because of the decisions.
I'm thinking about that too lately because there's been a lot of people where I've said stuff and they've gone in other directions, and I only have enough emotional capacity to maintain certain priorities. Like priorities are my relationship with God, my relationship with my wife, my relationship with my close friends, and then I have my clients. And then outside of that, it's like the amount of time I can delegate to different things just dwindles. But I know there have been people that have reached a boundary with me and have said, "Hey, I'm not okay with our relationship as it stands, but I want you to chase me." And they respond in a way that's not really healthy, because they're not healthy people, but they still want the relationship to happen, you know. But it's almost like they bait me saying, "Hey, our relationship's not okay. Are you going to do something about this? Are you going to do something about this? Are you going to do something about this?" And when I don't, they get upset at me. But it's like, you know, I'm thinking about people who have a lot of influence, you know. As you gain more influence in whatever field you're in, you have less time for people who are not going to step towards you in a healthy way on your level.
Mm.
And I want to be sensitive to how people respond, because I'm not saying that if somebody's not quote unquote on your level that they're a piece of trash. I'm not saying
No,
that at all.
not
I'm
at
just saying,
all.
like, there's just different expectations with different walks of life. Not saying one's better than the other in most cases, but just realizing that sometimes if people stop at a boundary and they want me to pursue them, I have to be okay with not pursuing them because they're not doing their part, which is, I believe, where you're at, you know,
Yeah.
with some of these relationships. And that really does suck, because you can kind of, like with that relationship I talked about earlier, where the person was going this way and I was going this way. It's like, I could see how awesome it could be because I like a lot about this specific person
Right.
or these specific people. And one of those people that you and I have as a mutual friend, it just like makes me really sad to think what they're choosing. And I mean, I'm not really pursuing this person either, but they've not pursued me
Yeah.
either. You
Yeah.
know, and Ariane's been really good at telling me that. Like, and sorry to keep
Oh,
talking,
you're good.
but
You're good.
um, yeah, especially thinking about community building and how I like to put things together, specifically people, and connect people. Um, just realizing that, you know, I have all these motivations every week to, oh, I need to reach out to this person, or I want to message this person, or do this for this person, and then I feel bad about not doing that. Ariane's been really good at bringing me back to the center and saying, well,
They
why
haven't
do you
reached
feel
out
bad
to
about
you.
that? They haven't reached out to you at all. Why do you
Yeah.
feel bad about not reaching out to them?
Yeah. Yeah. This is something that kind of hit me, like when we grow physically, there's clear stages. You got firstborn baby, then they go into like they're able to sit up and they're able to crawl, and then they become a, you know, slowly they learn to speak, they become a toddler, then become a child, then they become a preteen, teen, blah blah blah, teen, adult. Once you get to that point of adulthood, there's still stages, I think, that people go through, levels of maturity that are grown into, developed, whatever, over time, that really do differentiate between one person to another person. Doesn't mean that the value of one person who has matured this far is any less than the person who's matured this far, but there there's such a thing, they are such a real thing, that trying to go backwards to someone who isn't in that same maturity level is just sometimes not either possible or toxic even to try to do. And one of the things that I've recognized is that I've slipped into a state of maturity where I'm no longer trying as hard to be people's Holy Spirit, um, which is another way of saying, like, I can't hold people's hand anymore through certain things. There was a time growing up where I was very much so the social outcast throughout middle school, high school, didn't really fit in. We'd moved from Florida to North Carolina, and the culture from Florida to North Carolina is just different. Especially 20 years ago, it's different between those two states. And on top of that, being an only child, I didn't know how to interact with people my own age. Much less people of the South, if you will. And so I felt very alone during that time, and people didn't know how to like provide an olive branch to me. So I grew up pretty rejected. Um, After that point, um, God started to really take me out of that place of rejection when I went to college and I began to grow. And I went from being the outcast to being the welcomer of outcasts, you know, loving and bringing in people like that because I could very much so relate it. And in the beginning, I had space and the immaturity to just be everything for everyone as much as I possibly could. Not from a place that I thought I was all high and mighty, not, but I was definitely acting like the high and mighty, like I'm here to take care of your every emotional need. And as I began to develop deeper relationships with good, healthy people, I slowly have lost the ability to be other people's Holy Spirit. Like, not a forced thing, just a thing. Like, I just, when after a while, I'm like, you figure it out on your own, because I can't do this for you. And I've recognized that there a lot of that kind of friendship, uh, at least whatever has existed in my previous community. I kind of built that community around that part of myself, and now that part of myself is dead. And so I think part of the issue of what I've been going through is that, my level of maturity at this point has changed from my level of maturity when I started that community. Um, and so now I'm kind of like navigating that. So I feel like, honestly, there are different levels of maturity. They're not physically represented, but they're definitely cognitively representative when you realize you can't just help everyone and be their everything for them and be codependent.
Thinking of codependency, it just makes me think about, because we always have to bring it back to Jesus because we're Christians. The Bible talks about something called being unequally yoked. And I remember that the first, I guess, adult relationship that I had, and I don't mean adult like, having sex. I'm talking like age 18 and older relationship that I had. I was dating this girl, and she was a Christian. And it was great. And then one day she said, yeah, I feel like God's leading me away from this relationship because we're unequally yoked. And that pissed me off because I was like, what do you mean? We have a lot of fun together. This is good. I mean, what are you talking about? This figment of your imagination is telling you, because I didn't believe in God back then. And that was really frustrating to me. And then, just as I got older, just ruminating on. I didn't date through all my 20s, but then I started like, okay, let me read up on this Jesus person. Let me see. But there was this one part in the Bible where it talks about Jesus preaching on a hill, and he said, "For those of you who have ears to hear, let them hear." And he was saying all these things. There were people that were just walking by, and some people just, they didn't care to listen to him. There were some people that hung around, and as they hung around in multitudes, Jesus was talking in parables. He told stories, and they were stories that weren't at anybody directly. They were just teaching, kind of like old nursery rhymes and stuff that we learn through what's the word where you take the subliminal message from it.
Oh, I don't know what it's called.
There's a term for that, but. There were some people that heard that and they were like, "This man is crazy. This, what the heck, But then out of that group, that smaller group of people, you had a smaller yet group of people who said, "Okay, well, Jesus, what the heck are you talking about?" They sought him out and they said, "What the heck are you talking about?" And then Jesus would say, "Well, here's the concept." And then there was even yet within that smaller group, an even smaller group that said, "Jesus, could you please lay this out for us?" And I think about what that means to be unequally yoked, because that doesn't mean that the people that just went on about their lives and didn't care to hear or didn't care to think, okay, well, is this applicable to my life, and they just threw that in the trash. That doesn't mean those are bad people that have any less value. It's okay, this just was not the season for it. Like if I go to the grocery store and I'm making meatloaf, I don't look for chicken, I look for beef. There's something that's applicable to me right then, and I walk past all the chicken, which is great, but it's just a different time. I mean, the Bible even talks about that. God makes everything beautiful in its time. There is a season for everything, a season for sowing and a season for reaping,
Yeah.
And thinking about relationships being unequally yoked in that regard, it's like when you identify that people are not willing to pursue and say, well, what are you talking about? Okay, I really just don't get it. Can you please explain this more to me? Like I've done that. So in my most recent relationship, which is, hey, I'm married to her, check it out. We've had issues that previously drove a wedge in my relationships, but there have been times where given the opportunity to walk away, we didn't walk away. We said, hey, you matter to me. I'm going to go through this conflict and I'm going to ask questions. And just like our relationship, Brandon, we have an understanding that we're going to be okay regardless. We understand that if there's an issue if the person says I need space, you give them space, but there's a subconscious understanding that there's going to be reconciliation in the future. And that's how trust is built.
Yeah.
But looking
Yeah.
at those relationships and the whole equally yoked that equally yoked piece, it's like, well, what is their motivating factor for being in this relationship? Is it loving me? Is it getting something out of me? Because the other day when you and I had that altercation here at the house, and I was like, hey, you're pissing me off. Could you just not ask me what's wrong? Can we just get this done, please? Because there's something else that I have to do after this, and you asking questions and making this take even longer is exacerbating the fact that I'm annoyed with you. You know, you understood, okay, well, I'm going to meet him where he's at. He just needs me to, we just need to get this work done and we'll fix this later. And you trusted that I was going to come back to you.
Mm-hmm. I
Um,
did.
but there's been other relationships in my life where I've undergone this transformation from then to now, understanding, okay, well, I like conflict. Conflict is healthy. I'm going to address certain questions. If I have an issue with you, I'm going to bring it to you. I'm going to say, hey, here's an issue that I'd like to resolve. Do you want to resolve this with me? And there have been several people that are like, no, I don't want to resolve that. And they run away. Or why are you asking me that? And they get their feelings hurt that I'm addressing something that I see as an issue. But since I've been on the giving and receiving end of that, I know how healthy it is. It's that I see something that's healthy in this relationship that they just don't see yet. And when I draw that line and they choose to not engage in what I believe is healthy, which is conflict, and they see that I'm worth the cost of going through this, it's like, that really sucks. I'm really sad that this isn't going to work out. But I only have enough space in my life for people that are going to step towards me too.
Yeah, it's just been really hard with expecting that there was gonna be more grace, more just patience with all this than that was actually happening. And granted, hopefully it will happen in the future. Um, but at the moment, it just wasn't happening. And because it's like the things that I have done in the community are things that you or my other close friends, we would have worked that out yesterday. Like we'd have worked through it. If it was a problem to you, it'd been fine. And in reality, things that I set into place were things that all of you guys were like, Brandon, this just makes sense, duh, kind of thing. And so it's, but like, if it turned out to have been something that you did not agree with or whatever, we would have worked through it, and maybe we might have agreed on it, but we'd still be there. And I didn't have to wonder, well, gee, is Tim gonna just be gone tomorrow and never gonna hear from him again? Is Eric just never gonna talk? I don't wonder these things with you guys. I just know some point conversations will be had. It's gonna be okay, and that's what I was expecting to some degree with people that were as affected by the decisions that I made, been involved with the community as long as they have been involved, that they would have more steps to try to work out and to maintain and sustain the friendship. And so far, that hasn't happened. And I think the reason why it's hurt is not necessarily because it happened, but because there's still always a part of me that internalizes this stuff and thinks, like, where have I gone wrong? Am I the problem? Or whatever. And in this moment, Tim, I'm recognizing and wondering, like, for the first time today, like, have I also been worried that God will reject me? Because one of the things that, has been brought up that I just freshly discovered as of, like, Friday of last week was that rejection and feeling rejected is another trigger for me when it comes to porn. Like, I could not.
There it is.
There it is. There it is. Back to zero yet again. It's another one of those triggering things, and it hit me, and I recognized, like, I knew it immediately that was accurate because I had seen all the times that I struggled with it were all also simultaneous times where I felt alone and felt abandoned by people.
Mhm.
So rejection slash abandonment, whatever. Um, and it's one of those things that also ended up causing me to kind of withdraw from people because of the pain that is involved with the rejection, to just kind of sustain any sort of positivity, if you will. Um,
Mhm.
so never alone, God's on your side. That, that's true. That's true. Um, but I recognized that recently, so now I'm like all the more determined to deal with the feeling of rejection, because I know also it's not really me. Like it desperately feels like me, and that's because I still can't figure out how much of this is my fault and how much of it is theirs. But just like Ariane has told you that, like, well, Tim, no one has come to you about these things. You're feeling bad about not going to them. They're not coming to you. I think I need to recognize in this moment that, like, Brandon, even if what you did could have been done better, are they actually coming to you to work this thing out with you? Are they pushing through their own discomfort to salvage the friendship, the relationship? And at the moment, for a lot of them, the answer is just no.
Yeah,
And
well, Brandon, if I can jump in real quick because this story is kind of relevant.
okay,
I have somebody that is that's significant in my life. I won't say how, but they recently had an issue where they were in an extreme place of brokenness, and this person has spent years of their life building communities. And when I say communities, I mean like leadership upon leadership upon leadership. That was their role, you know.
mm-hmm.
And then this thing happens, and this leadership community that they had raised up in many cities to love and support and do different things basically gave them two of these, you
Oh,
know?
geez.
And just thinking about that, it'd be really easy for them to think to themselves, well, my whole purpose over the past several years is to raise up leaders who learn to love and to teach other people to do that. And these very people that I've served, much like you, Brandon, for all these years thinking that I was doing a good job in teaching them how to love, have chosen to give up on me or drop me because of XYZ circumstance. And that's really scary, especially when you do things in the name of the Lord, you know,
Right.
because it's really easy to think, have I failed?
Right.
Do I not understand love? Is God really not for me? What am I doing with my life? And, that is kind of sad to think that you raise entire communities in Jesus' name and then they choose to do this. I mean, go to any forum online, man. Like one of the biggest issues in our country, especially, is that in Jesus' name, Christians are persecuting more people than people that don't stand for Jesus in the first place, you know? And so it's like, well, then what's the point of following Jesus? What's the what's the point of true love with Jesus as the standard in relationship? And I think that's really scary because thinking about rejection, a lot of people found their identity in all these things that are just wavy and all over the place, whatever social agenda is out there right now. But then there's this whole concept of Jesus, which is supposed to be true love that we're founding our identity on. And when it comes to other people being invited and given the opportunity to be people, them throwing that in the trash and saying, you know what, true love, whatever, I'm not going to action that. It's like, well, what's the point? How does it even work if rejection's all over the place? If people are going to act in true love and still choose themselves at the end of the day. Um, and that I don't know, that's just such an interesting concept to me, and why, like, real friends, real relationships, just the idea that I could get married and have a healthy marriage is just like, it blows my mind. I mean, you and I are very similar, Brandon, but for me to find my wife out in the ether of the world, and for me to find her attractive and her to find me attractive, and to be in the same stage of life, and to want the same things, and to have the same composition of qualities that go well together, and also be in a place of humility and long suffering and kindness to one another, and have some of the same goals. I mean, it's just it doesn't make sense that stuff would ever work.
Yep.
Like even in our marriage, there's so much of the time where I choose myself, even though I profess I follow Jesus. And so just thinking about your situation about raising a community in Jesus and like serving them, and then them walking away to a degree, and you wondering like, have I failed God? Is God upset with me? You know, I think that that's more significant of the gospel than anything else. Just understanding that, I mean, that's what happened to Jesus. Jesus came for his people, all of us, right? And he served, and he didn't do anything, like he did nothing wrong. He was perfect love, and yet he got crucified. You know, and I think,
He was perfect love, and yet he got rejected by pretty much all of his followers.
yeah, and you know, I mean, that's exactly what you're seeing right now. It's like, do I feel bad about what I've done for these people, even though I did it with good heart, with good intention, imperfectly? I gave myself up for them from my perspective, because they'll never know what you truly sacrificed. You know, they'll never know truly what your heart was unless they pursue that side of you. They'll just make assumptions, which is a human thing to do. And it's not necessarily bad. It's just part of the process of understanding love. But they'll probably never know the sacrifices you made, you know? And it's like, did I fail? But I think that's the difference between a contract and a covenant, which we talked about several streams ago, you know?
But yeah, the rejection about from God part though, that's just more so specifically related to like the length of time that I've been like going through porn again, and just
Yeah.
like that's where that more so comes from. But like I recognize that it goes hand in hand with how I view other people. Is like again, like with dealing with rejection, is this my fault? Because I know I don't really view the outside of see their faults first. I always end up seeing my own faults first. And I've been, I just noticed that. So like if something fails, I'm like, what could I have done better or whatever? Not could the situation have been better? Could the other person have loved better? I'm not, that usually is not my first thought. And especially so with God, because God doesn't fail. Like he is not imperfect. um, so he is the standard of perfection. Um,
Well, if God never fails, Brandon, why are you still looking at porn? Yeah, I think that's the question that you're asking, though, you know?
I don't not I don't think so, because I understand that God allows us to make mistakes. So like I don't think that is a matter of like if God's perfect, then why didn't he take care? No. But I have worried, what I have definitely worried though is that with me not stopping when I want to stop in the first place and like continuing to deal with this for a while, will this eventually result in God having to reject me? Um, that I think is more closely related to the rejection that I'm feeling and worrying over. And I feel like this morning God was like, I want you to look up scripture verses that talk about situations of where people are losing their salvation. And I found a good plethora of them. But then I also, after combing through them, found some sections where it was like, no one can snatch you out of his hand, kind of thing too. Now to him who's able to keep you from stumbling, like stuff of that nature too. Like he can keep you, and it felt like he was like, all these scripture verses. Now I want you to focus on these ones in particular about how I'm never going to leave you nor forsake you. That
Never gonna give you up, never gonna
gonna
let you
let you
down.
down, never gonna run around and desert you. Yeah, yeah. I just got Rick rolled. Anyways, but he was wanting me to focus more so on those scripture verses and to recognize that I'm not so far outside of his grace that he cannot pull me up and take care of me. And so I still feel gross. Honestly, I'm still working through that, Tim. And like even more desperately now, because it's like I don't want rejection to control me in such a way that it has for the past 30 years. Because I logically I understand that the people are not really necessarily rejecting me, they're rejecting the boundaries I set, and in some cases they're rejecting Christ in me. So I recognize that, and I also recognize that Jesus was rejected by many, more than I have ever been rejected by, to the point of being let like offered up to persecution and death, and I have not. And so it's like, if the most perfect man who ever walked the earth was still lied about, still slandered, still gossiped about, and still put up onto a tree to die, how much more am I, not perfect, am going to deal with that kind of stuff, and I don't have to be worrying about it. And I really need to keep focusing on the fact that, like, well, yes, there are other things that I could have done better and things that I could be doing. There's also things that other people can be doing, and I do not need to feel bad because, like, unless God specifically tells me to do something and I don't, there is more than just my role to play. There's also their role to play, which they have not.
And one of my favorite traits of God that I didn't really appreciate when I was younger, is that He always gives us the ability to choose. And just thinking about my brother Scott, my brother-in-law Scott, and his my half sister Tasha. Um, he is a county. I think he's a sheriff. He's a police officer up in Martinsville, Henry County, Virginia. And he was telling me that their house was one of those homes where all of the kids would congregate. Like all the guys would always meet over there and hang out. And there were kids, 18, 19, that would come over there, and they would sometimes allow them to drink because they were going to do it anyways. Um, and I just think that's kind of interesting because they were trying to teach them a lesson, not in avoiding sin, but how to navigate it. Like, why do you do as you do? And the whole concept was, they need to know their tolerance when it comes to alcohol, and, if they're going to do it, how to do it safely, or how to limit themselves, and like think about why you do things. And he was like, well, there was one night where he asked the guys, what do you think you're going to blow on the breathalyzer? And I think it's like 0.08 is the legal limit. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but he was like, what are you going to blow on the breathalyzer? And all the kids were like, I'm fine to drive. I'll probably blow a 0.02, 0.06 or whatever. And 4 out of 5 of those kids blew like a 0.16, double the legal limit. And he was like, well, the whole point wasn't to get them to avoid it, but to help them understand from a heart position why it's wrong and what to do, and like address their proclivity and their what's the word I'm looking for? Their desire. Like, why do I want to drink in the first place? Why do I want to overdo it? How do I limit myself? And God is kind of the same way. It's not like He wants you to sin at all, but instead of avoiding sin, He's going to ask you, well, why are you engaging it in the first place? Which I've seen you do multiple times with porn, Brandon, because you've gone through seasons where you've been able to resist, then you've gone through seasons where you couldn't. And each time you've gone through that, there's been something that's been uprooted.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if God really is who He says He is, and I'm being a good son, and God was really going to save me, then why am I still engaging in this? But God kind of flips that on its head, and it's like, well, Brandon, I'm not rejecting you. I'm actually just trying to teach you from a place that's going to be long term, because you're going to own it instead of just avoid it. And I think that's weird for a lot of people. That concept is really scary because
Very.
letting a 15-year-old choose, or a 12-year-old choose something like, I don't know, pornography or drugs or whatever. Like there's a limit. Like, you don't just let a 2-year-old use a blender.
Yeah.
But you have to have that consciousness and awareness to say, okay, well, when are they capable of making their own decisions, and allowing them to stumble a little bit so they can understand the whys and the hows. I think a lot of people can toss God to the side too quickly because they think, okay, well, He's not for me, or because the result isn't what I want it to be, and it's in my time. Ooh, there's something off here. God must be rejecting me, or just whatever, the expectations thing. And people are the same way. If this person doesn't change this about their personality within X time frame, then I'm just gonna see you because you had this fault, or because you did this thing that doesn't align with my worldview. See you. That's just a human condition, I guess.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I also encountered when it came to like the stuff that I've dealt with my community. Is that there was a handful of them that were like, I hope you change for the better and grow through this because I don't like your decision, but I'm gonna leave you now. Or in some cases, they were like I hope this pain and suffering that I'm putting you through will cause you to change or grow because I can't see any other way to get through your thick skull. And it was just like thinking about those, like that's like the least helpful thing you could do for anyone you're trying to help grow through something. Like unless you know that you need to take a step back because it's toxic and it's not healthy. Sure. But if it like not with the whole like I hope this pain causes, you to grow, but if that you need to take a step away because right now I'm not the right one to help you through this. But if you are, and you do have the ability to help them through something, and you just you're out of there, like that's not going to help anyone grow. It's like you said, here's a problem, deal with it. Like, how do I deal with the problem? I don't even know what the problem is. Like, I don't know these things. What the heck? And that's partially how I've also been treated through this process of just like, you suck, figure it out. Bye. I'm like, okay. Um Thanks.
Yeah.
And then through all that, I've had to forgive people. And I will continue to until, because, like, man, if I don't forgive them, it will definitely wreck me. It will definitely cause me to be afraid of them. And I don't want to be afraid of anyone for any reason whatsoever. Um, and that's something kind of learned through the last time that I've been through a situation somewhat akin to this, of just like, the pain that the person put me through until I was able to forgive them was just causing me to be afraid of the next time they will do something like that to me. And forgiveness literally broke the chains of bondage of fear to that person off. And that's what I will continue to do because I refuse to be a slave or a bondage to what if this happens again? Like, no, we'll deal with it if it does, but I'm no longer a slave to fear and to that person, and I will not be bitter or resentful towards anyone for any reason, period. And I
Yeah, I
think,
think the relationships in my life that I value the most aren't based on circumstances, but they're based on the value of the person. Yeah, it's like I trust that regardless of what they're going through, they're going to take responsibility for themselves and they're going to see me beyond the circumstance. And it's like trusting. I can trust people and who they actually are, but it's really tough to trust circumstances because circumstances, I don't know, they're always messy.
yeah. And I had a thought after that point, and I forgot the thought because it didn't get out immediately, and it is out of here, out of here. It's gone.
Well, maybe that's for the best because
Yes.
we're out of time.
We have made it to the hour mark. All right. Well, cool. Well, if you guys have enjoyed this stream, make sure to like it, hit the subscribe button with the bell notification if you've not done so already, because we enjoy having you guys interact with us. Thank you, Deathbane, for joining us and providing your thoughts in this. I very much so appreciated that. Um, and so, if you want to be a part of this, or if you want to be a part of the gaming that we do, we broadcast and play things like Minecraft, Overwatch, and we'll play other games too. I'm particularly probably going to be playing some Midnight Ghost Hunt when that drops this weekend, I think. Yes, no, not even this
Gosh, is that
weekend.
this weekend?
That's dropping Thursday, so we could even freaking play it sooner. I don't know. But anyways,
What is this Wii nonsense?
I mean, I don't know. It's up to you if you want to be a part of this, Tim. That's up to you.
My pronouns are. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Anyways, but yes, with that said, we broadcast every week on Monday, Friday, and Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we'll be live again this Friday with some gaming. You'll definitely want to be a part of that. I want to see you there. We'll see you guys next time.
I can see far away from where I've been. He says, I see a potential. I see a potential in my eyes. I see a potential. I never lost sight of the reason why. you're alive. You're alive. We sing Jesus, you're alive.